Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's program brought to you by the U.S. Botanic Garden. My name is Courtney Burrs, the online education specialist with the Learning and Outreach team here at the Garden. We are so excited to kick off Earth Day week with you with Delving Deeper, Aerobic Community Composting online lecture with Najwa Womack of SiStain 8. Let me introduce our presenter. A native of Washington, D.C., Najwa F. Womack is the founder and CEO of SiStain, a creative compost education and supplies company based east of the river in D.C., where her father, aunties, and uncles were raised. Najwa blends her passion for performing arts and global experiences to inspire earth saving behaviors and creatively promote environmental awareness using this vehicle of traditional aerobic composting. Najwa holds a BA in International Studies and Development and later obtained a Master's Urban Compost Certificate with DC's Department of Parks and Recreation in 2018. In 2024, SiStain 8 won DC's Department of Energy and Environment's District Sustainability Award. And lastly, as an advocate of compost with the U.S. Composting Council, Najwa is committed to creatively expanding traditional composting efforts locally, nationally, and globally. And she's here with us today. Welcome, Najwa.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this. And I just want to say I am super excited and honored to be kicking off Earth Day 2025 or the weekend with the Honorable or the United States Botanic Garden. Okay. So today we're going to have a lot of fun. I want you all to stay with me throughout this hour. We're going to delve deep into aerobic community composting here with myself. And before I introduce myself, we're going to get into just one little exercise. But composting, y'all, is all about increasing regenerative literacy. So that's how we use it, or SiStain 8. Okay. So before you hop off today, there are just a few things I want you to walk away with. Okay. Number one, I want you just to embrace why composting is so critical for soil health, especially what we're experiencing right now on our planet. Number two, I want you to strongly consider community composting as a strategy for mitigating global, not just local, but global climate change. And then the third thing I want you to walk away, I want you to be inspired and I want to equip you with skills to jumpstart your own operations that are both hygienic and safe in nature. Okay. So that's what you're going to take away today. Now, I want to try something with this online audience. This is a little exercise I like to call word correlation. So over the next 3 slides, I have a set of words, and I want you to think to yourself, are these words similar in how they look? And are they correlated in their meaning? Okay. So the first 2 words is discipline and disciple. Do these 2 words look similar in how they're spelled? Now think about their meaning. Is there any correlation? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Okay. Because in order to be a good student or a disciple, you gotta be disciplined in some way, some format, right? The next set of words is fiance and finance, okay? These 2 words, do they look similar in how they're spelled? Now think about their meanings. Any correlation? So I'm going to go ahead and say the connector here may be money. Now, I know money doesn't matter for everybody, but if you want to consider spending your life with someone, you may want to have your finances in order. And then the next 2 words are soul and soil. Do these 2 words look kind of similar in how they're spelled? Now, here's where I want you to delve deeper. Think about their meaning. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the soul of something is its life force energy, or how it's alive, or how it even thrives. So the soil to me is the earth's life force energy. So soil is equal to the soul of our planet. And anytime we destroy soil through things like unsustainable farming practices, we're destroying the health or the soul of our planet. Now, before I introduce myself, I want to introduce some inspirations behind this work. This is a photo of my maternal grandmother, Elizabeth Mary Womack. And as maybe around the age of 7 or 8 years old, I would witness my grandmother grow what seemed like endless collards and turnips. I said, Grandma, where are you getting all of this food from? And she said, Child, the backyard, in the soil. I said, Really? So I was fascinated just at the age of 8. So fast forward about a decade later, the first country I ever traveled to outside of the United States was South Africa. And I stayed for a month at the age of 16. And while I was there, I did some great community service work, which also included me gardening. So I remember this moment like it was yesterday. I had my hands in the soil and I remembered my grandmother and soil, and I felt good in this moment. Now, fast forward about another decade and some change later, and I established my own business called Sustained 8. Now, Sustained 8 is just a play on the word sustained, spelled like sisters, creative. And then the number 8 speaks to infinity, or doing the work of sustainability for future generations. And what I did was establish the business on 4 main principles, including spirituality, health, female empowerment, and environmental sustainability. So everything we do around composting is on top of these 4 pillars at the foundation. Now, since the establishment, I've been doing so much work around lecturing and getting the word out about how important composting is. In the photo on the right, I'm at the National Arboretum teaching teachers how to teach compost in their class. That was an awesome event. And then on the photo on the left, that was actually Earth Day 2022. I had an opportunity to teach 5 separate lectures to grades 1 through 5 at an elementary school in West Baltimore. So the work is continuous and I enjoy every moment of it. Now, just to establish a little bit more street cred, just how Courtney said in the introduction, in 2018, I was able to obtain a Department of Parks and Recreation Master Urban Compost Certificate after 12 weeks of an intense training. Then in 2021, I joined the United States Composting Council. Now, this photo to me is very significant because on this call, we're finishing up a Zoom call, and the people on this call are from all over the world. I'm talking Lebanon, Mexico, Brazil, Puerto Rico, all on this call, and we're talking about composting. So I'm very happy that people are all over the world doing this work. Now, this amazing award that's shaped like the shape of DC, I was able to win in 2024, and it's called the District Sustainability Award that was granted by DC's Department of Energy and Environment and Destination DC. So this was last year, March, and I'm super happy here in this photo. So as an introduction, my name is Najwa Womack. Again, I'm the founder and CEO of SiStain 8. And SiStain 8, again, is all about increasing compost education as a form of climate change mitigation. So we can do it and we can inspire each other. All right. So welcome again. Happy Earth Day weekend. Happy Earth Month. And we're going to get more into the presentation. So let's start with 2 composting statistics. Number 1, this is from the United States Composting Council, and it basically says if every American or everybody in the United States right now composted their food scraps, it would be the equivalent of removing 7.8 million cars from off of the road. So as far as energy savings, That is huge. That's a huge deal because methane is one of the most critical emitters of greenhouse gases. So if humans can work to divert our food scraps off of landfills, we're doing a great thing. Next, this awesome infographic from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance basically says that 50% of everything that we're throwing in the garbage is compostable. So that means we're throwing away potential. So you have those other percentages, you have wood waste, yard trimmings, paper, and paperboard. But then you have that 21% is our food waste. That is all going to the landfill when we can be diverting it. So folks, we have work to do. Then lastly, I have this excerpt. This is from the compost feasibility study done right here in DC by Mayor Muriel Bowser's office in 2017. And I just pulled an excerpt from a 70-page document. This is page 22, and I'm going to read it. It says, high participation occurs in communities that place significant value on waste reduction and diversion and understand the full circle benefits of composting. Generating a community culture focused on these factors would involve continuous education on the reasons for and benefits of composting, a sense of trust and commitment in the district leadership, and more than likely time. So the why behind Sustained 8, it's all right here, folks. This is why we promote education, because if you know what you're doing, you'll probably have some investment in it. So we got to start there, teaching about compost. Now, what in the world is compost actually? So I have a Mr. Snuffy here to represent how people feel when you mention compost. They automatically say to me, Najwa, I love you, but no thanks, that stinks. But I'm here to tell you folks, compost is not something that just stinks. It's not garbage. It's not trash or funky foods. It's not stinky mush. It's not sandy matter. And what I mean by sandy matter is when compost is finally decomposed and is finished, it shouldn't be something that you can pick up with your hand and just blow it out of your hand. That's not what compost is. And I'm here to debunk that. And before I define it, I want to tell you, before it even becomes compost, what you're actually dealing with is something called compost feedstock or pre-compost or source separated organics. People always bring me their food scraps and they say, hey, I got some compost for you. Well, it's not compost just yet. You're bringing me the ingredients to create compost. So I just wanted to touch on that. So let's get into it. Compost is actually a verb and noun simultaneously. So I can say to you, hey, everybody on this webinar today, meet me tomorrow at 5:30. We're going to compost a whole ton of bananas. That is a verb. It's an action. We're going to go chop it up and do things to it, right? We're going to compost it. But on the other hand, it's a noun. It's a product. It's something you end up with. So the actual definition is compost is the product of the natural decomposition of organic material. And what you end up with when it's all said and done is a 70% dark cocoa rich soil amendment. And it's chock full of minerals, nutrients, and microorganisms that do special things for our soil and or dirt. So throughout this presentation, you may hear me refer to soil biology or the biology of the soil. And compost helps with restoration of soil biology because what it does, it helps soil to create its own fertility within. So you have cycles of predators eating prey and things pooping out each other. It's just a whole loop, right? Even if that sounds nasty, but that's the way nature works, right? So it's just a balanced system of endings and beginnings. So that's what compost helps with, is soil biology. So this is a photo of finished compost. Dark, rich color. You can pick it up and it's nice and airy to touch. It smells pleasant. And this is what we work on creating is finished compost. So that's what compost is. Now, I'm here to tell you folks that people tend to use the terms soil, compost, and dirt interchangeably, but they're different. So when people say, hey, you have some good dirt, or I grew a whole bunch of celery in good dirt, what they're actually saying is, or referring to as good soil. Now, in the past, soil evolved from something called igneous rock, right? And igneous rock just broke down and it's full of minerals and nutrients. But when you fast forward to today, because of unsustainable farming practices and chemical fertilizers and just all of the pollution and issues we're experiencing with climate change, presently, that soil has become exhausted. So if we exhaust soil, we are destroying the soil biology. So we're changing our soil quickly into dirt. So dirt doesn't have biology. It doesn't have a sustainable system. But when you apply it to soil, you're enhancing it. You're making it better. But when you take compost and you apply it to dirt, you are resuscitating it. You're bringing it back to life. Okay? So I'm here to tell you folks, compost is something that we want to keep creating and putting on our soil and on our dirt to bring it back to life. Now, here are 8 critical reasons I think that you all out there should consider composting. Number 1, composting and creating compost is a very low-tech method of supporting the high-tech world of nature. Okay, Najwa, what do you mean by high-tech world of nature? Well, take a bird and a plane. Before the plane existed, somebody studied the bird. So nature is very complex and is a lot of systems. So we're always studying nature, right? Because it's really high tech. Now, low tech, by low tech method, I mean, you don't need all these advanced tools. Some of the tools I'm going to explain later, super basic. Now, the number 2 reason you want to create compost or why compost is critical is because it improves soil quality. Now, this is a before and after picture. I had a few middle school students in Northeast DC to help me cleaning up Nanny Helen Burroughs Avenue. And we found a tree, the hollow of a tree that just has so much trash in it. So we extracted the trash and then we top dressed the soil at the base of the tree with finished compost. Because what we want to do is restore that soil quality. So all of those microorganisms are going to be released into the dirt of that tree or the base of it and do its work. So that's what we wanted. Now, the third reason why you should consider composting is because it lessens the dependence on chemical fertilizers. Now, I'm not throwing any shade against people who, make money off of their fertilizers or fertilizing companies, but I just want to emphasize the fact that fertilizers, they are all about the quick and robust plant growth, or like getting your plant to just quickly produce. And well, that's great, right? But in the long term, this quick and robust type of nature to fixing your plants, it comes at the expense of the soil. And by that, I mean, it can make your soil increase in salinity or salt. So if you have salty soil, you more than likely will not have organisms in there. Because think about it. Do you drink salt water? If you keep doing that, you're probably going to die, right? Now, on the other hand, compost is a sustainable format of getting your plant what it needs because it's going through the soil and it supports the long-term growth of your plant. So it takes longer, but it's more sustainable. So that's what I want you all to keep in mind when it comes to compost versus fertilizer. So you can totally get off of fertilizers if you continuously use compost on your soil. Now, one of the critical reasons compost is so amazing is because it increases the presence of beneficial organisms. So earthworms, actinomycetes, nematodes, fungi, bacteria, all of these things are found in the entire soil biology process, and it promotes that. So this is a photo of a skink, right? I have seen a lot of these, or several of them, in my compost pile. And first I was startled. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lizard. I never seen that before. But it's beautiful. It has this beautiful metallic tail. They come in different colors, oranges and purples. But the presence of them in a compost pile means that they are supporting the predator and prey relationship. So they're eating organisms that are smaller than them, and they're doing their job. So we have to do our work in supporting organisms. So over the next few slides, give me a chance to highlight a few of the organisms that do the work for us, whether we realize it or not. So before I do that, when people say bugs or insects, the term they're really referencing is something called arthropods. So you have larger arthropods and you have tinier arthropods. And then you finally have microbes. So they're all on different levels, right? So macro arthropods, you can see with your own eyes. Micro arthropods, some of them you can see with your own eyes. You may need a microscope for a few, but microbes, you definitely need a microscope to see them, but they all play their part in soil biology. Now, for Earth Day, y'all know we had to highlight the earthworm. The earthworm is amazing because its mere movement through soil in a compost pile, it creates porosity or airflow. Now, also, earthworms are great pulverizers of organic material. They break down things and they pass it through their systems, and it comes out better than before in the form of worm castings. And worm castings are great for the soil. Now, what in the world is this? So this is a type of protozoa. It's a microorganism, or a tiny, it's not a microbe, it's a microorganism. You definitely need a microscope to see it. But this is a photo of the amoeba devouring bacteria, right? So I'm telling you, this predator-prey relationship happens on all different levels in the soil food web. Next, this is another protozoa, but this is called a paramecium. And you're looking at the innards of the protozoa. But the presence of protozoa in soil means that there's a significant presence of earthworms because earthworms eat protozoa. So I'm telling you, folks, the organisms, they are the main event when it comes to good soil. Now, anybody heard of the pill bug or the potato bug or the roly-poly? This is probably one of my favorites. The pill bug is known to ingest soil or organic matter and reduce toxic metals. So it's an amazing shredder. It does its job of breaking down things, but also reducing metals in soil. Now, did you know its aquatic cousin is the lobster? So you have macro arthropods both in water and on land. So that's how amazing nature is. You don't know these things are related, but they're all doing their work to keep our oceans clean and our soil. Now I had to highlight mycelium because mycelium is like the root system of the fungi nation. So these are strands, right, of mycelium, and they go out to collect nutrients for plants. And they're known to have been able to travel about 3 football fields long to go and extract nutrients and bring it back to a plant. And I want to say that mycelium is like the Maybach of decomposers. It does a very effective job, and they're very tiny, but they do an effective job. And then we have to mention birds. This is an American robin, and birds are a major predator in the entire soil food web system. But the way that birds transmit organisms one place to another is just by landing on the bottom of its feet. So birds are always active doing all of the work to support soil health just by their movement, which is amazing. And then I had to highlight the family of gastropods. So slugs and snails both fall within that family, and the presence of them in your compost pile or your soil is a great sign. But if you have too many slugs in your compost pile, you may be dealing with conditions where air is not present. But I'm going to get more into that later. But they do a good job in representing the whole, again, predator-prey relationship, and they eat tinier organisms. Now, let's get into the fifth reason that composting is so critical. It recycles your food scraps locally, so there's no need to haul things away. You don't have to put it on a truck and then emit more emissions. Like, we can keep it local. The sixth reason is that compost prevents soil erosion. So this is a 2023 photo. 2 community members helped me to top dress 2 growing beds with finished compost. As you can see, that dark rich color, it's on there. It's really nice. And fast forward to today, this is those 2 same beds. You have garlic, comfrey, and some radish growing. I know you may not be able to see the radish, but it's very small. But you want to increase a soil's ability to hold water. And that's what compost does when you put it on soil. It strengthens it, right? So you don't have to deal with your nutrients washing away. Additionally, it keeps your soils from crusting. It holds moisture in soils that are sandy. It suppresses diseases. I'm telling you all, the list goes on and on and on. So you can refer to the Rodale Book of Composting for more on what actually compost does for soil. Now, the seventh reason is because while we want to keep compost at the forefront as something very critical, is that it promotes physical exercise and community. So shout out again to the Institute for Local Self-Reliance and the Neighborhood Soil Rebuilders for this awesome closed loop of community composting image. So starting with the bicycle, you don't need a truck or cars. You can haul off your compost to the compost bin. Once the compost is finished, you can put it on the soil in your community garden. You have your fresh local produce. From the produce, it goes to your plate, and then food scraps, and then the cycle repeats itself. This is amazing, folks, when it comes to helping our planet. We want a closed loop system. That is what community compost is all about. And then before I get into the eighth reason, this is a full circle moment of what community composting does. So say you have all of these people, Greg, Tim, Jamal, Gloria, Hans, Denham, Tina, Fatima. They all are bringing a variety of organic materials. It could be food scraps or anything from cardboard boxes. They shred it all small and they put it in that compost bin. You have just added a diversity of compost feedstock. And I'm here to tell you, folks, the more diverse your inputs are for your compost, the better the diversity is for the outcome. Okay, so diverse inputs or better compost means you're going to attract a diverse amount of organisms. And that's what we want. So think of a person who wants to be super healthy, right? And they eat a variety of foods, different colors of foods. The same thing goes for community compost. And that's why it's so strong, because everybody's putting in. So you get a variety. So when in doubt, diversify. That is a huge rule of nature, especially when it comes to composting. And then the eighth reason that community composting is so powerful is because it grants community with environmental agency. This is a 2022 photo of a food waste drop-off event, or after we finish. And as you can see, it's pretty cold outside. Everybody still has on their coats and hats, but we all came out and we contributed to that compost bin. Some people helped turn, some people helped chop, and it's just an amazing regenerative practice. Okay, so those are the 8 reasons I think we should all consider composting as super critical for our planet. Next, I'm going to go back a little bit. These are the brown material collection events. And in addition that we do with community, everybody comes out and rake. leaves so we can have them for our carbons. And then next we do food waste drop-off events here in Northeast DC. So these are the reasons that community composting is so good, because people come together to do all of these elements involved with maintaining compost. So I'm going to stop here and go ahead and open it up for the first half of questions. All right.
All right. Oh, wow. This has been so eye-opening, especially when you get into the science of composting and just seeing the world, the ecosystem that's around this composting activity. We do have questions about any tips for composting in a smaller space. Now, I think I have an idea of what's coming up for your program, but you can address this question from the audience.
Yes. And I actually will talk about this later, but just in a nutshell, when you are composting in a smaller space, you want to have prepared materials ready and always on hand. And by that, I mean carbons. You're going to have water, you're going to have your buckets, anything you need to make sure that your compost operations always stay hygienic. Okay. So that's one way, preparation, and then the tools. So again, I'm going to get into that, but I don't want to
Okay,
give out too much, but that's just in a nutshell.
great. And is that I think some of those resources that you talked about is in our handout. Yeah.
Absolutely, they are.
Okay.
They are.
Okay.
But great question. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so excited, and we're just loving the community aspect of it. And one more thing before we let you teach us some more. Um, does compost rejuvenate like dirt, or does it need soil in order for it to really do its thing? I mean, because it sounds like the difference between dirt and compost is that one actually has nutrients, and well, dirt and soil is that one has nutrients and one does not. But could you clear that up for us?
Absolutely. So dirt, it actually does have a lot of its nutrients present. Now keep in mind the word present,
Okay.
right? But it's locked away. So you can have like the sands of North Africa. It has its nutrients present, but the biology isn't. So basically,
Mm,
you need something that goes in and shocks the whole system and brings it back. And that's what compost does. So dirt is great, but things are locked away. It's like it went away because things are not working together.
okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yep. So we are at we're at a good point where we can keep going, and
Okay.
we'll push these other questions to the end. But we do have some other questions, so we're into it. We're ready.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. I'm gonna keep going. Are you guys
All
ready?
right.
All right. So again, happy Earth Day. Let's move into the next half of the presentation. So, biodegradable versus compostable. You'll sometimes hear these two terms used interchangeably, but they're very different. So, what's the difference? Now, the first thing is the time factor. How long does each of these two take to decompose? Now, biodegradable items, they are usually much slower to decompose. Just from my experience, my studies, and this is a photo sourced from Japan.gov, and this is a biodegradable plastic bottle, right? So about week 6, not bad. You can, it's breaking down, but it's not gone, right? And when it comes to climate change and fixing the issues on our planet, we need decomposition quickly, right? And then the other element to a biodegradable item is that you may, not all, but you may be dealing with toxins. So depending on what the material was made from and that being released into the soil, you may have an issue. Like plastic bottles. Yeah, they'll break down, but I don't know. They could take 1,000 years. I don't know. So, on the other hand, we have compostable items. They're super fast to break down because those microorganisms are going to join the party and they're going to begin to break down and decompose and shred, remove heavy toxic metals, which you saw with the roly poly, and then is usually harmless to the soil. because it happens so quickly. So that left bulleted list are some items that can be found easily in an urban setting, and they're all compostable. So I like to think of something compostable versus biodegradable as how long does it take? And then, how good is it for the soil once it starts to decompose? Okay. Now let's get into styles of composting. Y'all, it's many, many ways to compost. And people have been composting for thousands of years, okay? But I'm here to say I normally break them up into two categories, anaerobic and aerobic. So we're going to define those, okay? Now I want everybody on this webinar today, just work with me, breathe. Take a deep breath in and out. Repeat. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. So that should let you know that you are an aerobic organism. So there are aerobic forms of composting. And one way I like to remember aerobic composting is to simply remember aerobic exercise. It involves air, right? Or airflow. Air is moving through. And then there's a lot of composting organisms that also require air to live, just like us humans. Now, the first style of aerobic composting is, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with vermicomposting. So, vermicompost is all about composting with worms because that prefix vermi is Latin for worms. So, what type of worms, though? This, my friends, is a red wiggler, also known as the tiger stripe worm. And it does a really good job at breaking down your food scraps. It shreds it, it pulverizes it, and move it through its digestive system in the form of, and what you get is worm castings. And so worm castings are, it's pretty much viewed as a very, very valuable type of compost because a little bit goes a long way. And also the worm's digestive system has calcium carbonate in it. So it comes out better than before. And this is really good for your soil. Now, another style of composting with air or aerobic composting is hot composting, aka thermophilic composting. Now, with this style, as it compares to vermicompost, this involves heat, where vermicompost, it doesn't involve heat because eventually you'll kill the worms and you don't want to do that with heat. But there are four main elements that are needed for aerobic traditional hot composting, and they are carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and water. So if you can remember the acronym CNOW, you always know those four things are needed for traditional aerobic composting. And I also want to add here, folks, is that with a worm or when you compost with worms, if they eat seeds or let's say ingest seeds, they'll come out the other end and they won't be decomposed. But if you add seeds, if you have seeds that you need to compost with this style of composting or hot compost, it will break them down through the heat, right, of composting. Now here's a photo in 2019 of some volunteers helping me out, but you can see all four elements at play here. So the carbon is that straw, right? They're pulling it out of the compost bin. The nitrogen are those dark spots inside the pile, both in the compost bin and outside. That's the nitrogen really beginning to break it down. The oxygen element here, folks, is simply the gentleman pulling all of the materials out of the bin. They're aerating it, and air is so critical for successful traditional composting. And then lastly, water. The gentleman in the foreground is spraying the pile, making sure that it stays moist. So again, these are the four elements of traditional compost right at work, right here in this photo. Now that we know what aerobic or two styles of aerobic composting is or are, What do you think anaerobic composting is? If you guessed composting with little to no air, you're absolutely right. So it's the opposite of composting with air. All right. So, what are some styles of anaerobic composting? Have you ever heard of bokashi composting? So, I would like to think of bokashi composting as the kimchi or the kombucha of composting because it involves a fermentation aspect. Okay. So, let's get into bokashi. Where did it come from? This is Japanese professor Dr. Turuo Iga. And he came up with all these different types of experiments around something called purple non-sulfur bacteria. Now, in that photo on the right, you see that bottle called EM1. That is a microbial inoculant, and that's chock full of that bacteria or purple non-sulfur bacteria. But in order to get this to be fermented, you have to use a carrier source. So in that big bucket right there, that's wheat bran. You can also use shredded newspaper as the carrier source. So you're going to add a percentage of the EM1 to the wheat bran. And then finally, bacteria needs a sugar or food source, and that's going to be sugar, in this case, molasses. So you're going to add a percentage of molasses to the wheat bran, and you're going to mix it all up. And then you're going to apply it to your compost feedstock, right? And what you come out with is something that looks like this. I know, that may not look appealing to many, but this will sit for 2 weeks with that top on closed. And then this is what it'll look like when it's done. But your food scraps or your compost feedstock is now inoculated and full of that bacteria. And it's going to go to town on your soil or enhancing your soil. So what people do is take the contents of this bucket and bury it in the places where their soil needs work, just directly into the soil, right? And then it increases the microorganisms and then the entirety of the soil biology and the soil food web system. That is the beauty of bokashi composting. Also, I'm here to tell you folks, bokashi is amazing because you can put things in bokashi that you would not normally do or put in traditional compost. I'm talking about fish heads, chicken bones, pizza, things with oil and grease. You can put that in bokashi because it's going to be fermented. So that's the beauty about bokashi composting. And then you can refer to this book, by Adam Footer. It's called Bokashi Composting, Scraps to Soil in Weeks. It's an incredibly easy read. I've read it several times. And if you want to get started with bokashi composting, a great resource. Now, the last style of anaerobic composting is black soldier fly larva. Many of you all might have heard of this amazing organism, BSFL. And okay, so let me just be honest. I do not recommend this style of composting for any new composters. It can be tough because, people don't normally like to see things like larvae and what you consider maggots, right? But I'm here to tell you that, again, we want decomposition fast because we're living in the age of climate change. And these organisms are known to break down your food scraps or any organic material very quickly. So how do you create it? You put it in a bucket, your food scraps in a bucket, and you seal it off. These will appear and just start going to town on your food scraps. Now, I know a lot of people, again, you may not be able to stomach the sight of larvae, but they do their job. So this is a photo of the life cycle of the black soldier fly larva. But again, they're part of nature and they do a great job of shredding and breaking down. Now, just to wrap it all up, aerobic composting involves two styles, vermicompost and traditional composting, also known as hot composting or thermophilic composting. And then two styles of anaerobic composting is bokashi composting and composting with black soldier fly larvae. Okay. Now, some styles of composting involves a little bit of anaerobic and aerobic elements, but those are just to break it down for you. Okay. Now let's get into urban community composting. Now, as I go through the next few slides, remember, folks, there are many people moving to cities. Cities is where, well, a lot of movement are, a lot of jobs exist, right? But when it comes to urban community composting, people are living closer in proximity. So you have to take the extra measures to make sure things are done right. So let's look at an urban community composting tool. If you ever heard of the 3-bin compost knock system, this is an amazing tool to use for urban composting. Okay, it's 3 bins. In each bin, something separate happens, but people use this bin all different types of ways. They'll just use one bin for one particular reason, but in the process of teaching, I want to go ahead and say bin number 1, bin number 2, and bin number 3 are used differently. So this is a real photo of a community compost bin right here in Northeast. And that 4th bin off to the side, that's a browns only bin. So we collect a lot of brown materials and we put it inside of there to make sure we have it available for what's going to happen in bin number 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to get into that now. Now, bin number 1 is all about building the pile, right? You need your compost feedstock in the form of number 1, nitrogen or greens. So these two terms are used interchangeably, greens and nitrogen and greens. This works as the heat source of your compost pile. And we're going back to traditional composting. So this is a photo of me taken a few years back, and I'm super happy because we're about to chop up all of these food scraps, make it smaller, and begin to add it to bin number 1. Now, on the left, that bulleted list are some common nitrogen material items that can be found in an urban setting, okay? So you have your raw fruit and vegetable scraps, and you're going to chop it up, and we're going to get ready to pair it. And you remember, you have to pair nitrogen with something. Carbon. So you got to have your browns or your carbon if you're going to have nitrogen, especially if you're doing urban composting. So this is a very fun photo of a few community members. And who doesn't love to just jump in a pile of leaves, right? So I think autumn leaves are an amazing brown source because they're dry, they're ready to go. And in that left bulleted list are some other common carbon or brown materials that can be found in an urban setting. So you have to get your browns if you're going to have your greens, okay? But I'm here to tell you, folks, before you take those leaves and you pair it with your nitrogen, it's a great idea to shred them. This is a community photo of a shred day. And those 2 red and black machines, those are the compost shredders. Excuse me, not compost, leaf shredders. That's what I mean, leaf shredders. So we're going to take those leaves and we're running them through the machine and they're breaking it down smaller and we're going to store them in those brown bags. So we can have them anytime we have our nitrogen to go into bin number 1. So this was a happy day. We're shredding leaves. Next, I'm here to tell you folks, if you shop at places like Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Mom's, or wherever there are brown paper bags, please, folks, don't throw those away. Shred them and have them for brown materials to be paired with your nitrogen or your green materials because they don't need to end up on a landfill. So this is a photo of brown paper bags that have been ran through a cross-cut shredder. Great thing to have for carbons. Now let's take a look at ratios. So she's talking about greens and browns, but how much of each? So the general rule to keep things hygienic is you want 3 browns to 1 part nitrogen, or 3 carbon, to 1 nitrogen. And this helps to keep things balanced because if you have way more nitrogen than carbon, stop, don't move any further, do not pass go, don't do it, please don't do it. You cannot compost traditionally and successfully in an urban setting if you have a lot more nitrogen. You got to have more carbon. So that's just baseline, okay, to start. So how does that look, that carbon to nitrogen ratio? Now in a compost pile, we're building it. This is how it looks. That's the amount of browns on the outside. And then on the inside, that green, you're going to mix those up and then you're going to cover the pile. So that's pretty much how it looks when you want to have, when it comes to how balanced the green is to the brown material. Now, as you get more advanced into composting, and from my studies, what I'm learning is that this is a ratio that makes sure, it really ensures that your pile heats up quickly. And what is that? It's 1 part nitrogen to 3 parts nitrogen to 6 part carbon. So high nitrogen are things like alfalfa meal in your hair. Yes, human hair has high nitrogen in it. So y'all, this slide in particular is a whole nother lecture, but I had to throw it in there to let you all know that you can compost in many different styles and keep it hygienic. But just from my studies, I've learned that you want high nitrogen materials so it can heat, your pile can heat up faster. And this finally is a photo of me and a few community members. Probably this photo was in 2020, but we're adding the chopped green and brown material to bin number 1. Now let's move into bin number 2. Basically, bin number 2 needs to be monitored for aeration and moisture, meaning that you want to use 2 particular senses. You want to use your sight and your smell, or your senses of smell and sight, to monitor what are happening. I know this is really funny, but does it smell right? Are you smelling like super funky smells? Is it, making your stomach turn? You know something is wrong. And if you're seeing items that are not breaking down, they're whole and, whole pieces of food, you have to do a little bit work in monitoring and adjusting what's needed to create more decomposition. So this is a photo of me monitoring bin number 2. So again, I'm looking and checking for any large pieces of food. Is it any that I can view with or see with my own eyes? It may need to be chopped smaller. And then the smell. If it smells like vinegary or something is off or really smells really, really bad, you may have to do more aeration. You may want to take everything out and turn it, or even add more carbon material. So it's kind of like cooking. You taste it, you see, okay, you're not going to taste any of this. Don't put this in your mouth, but you want to monitor it. You want to see if things are going the right direction into finished compost. So that's basically what bin number 2 is about. You're going to keep monitoring. Now, I also want to tell you in bin number 2, it's a good idea to keep your compost pile in the shape of a triangle or a pyramid, because in traditional compost, all of the heat or the action, the breaking down or the bacteria is at the center of the pile, right? That's where the science is happening. And that's why traditional compost is really great. Now, that biofilter is basically a blanket of carbon materials you want to make sure goes on the outside of that compost pile, because what it does is prevent other organisms on the outside. When I'm talking about organisms, I mean vermin, rats, raccoons, possums, mice, anything that, creeps around at night. You don't want to attract it to your compost pile. So a biofilter helps to keep everything pretty much locked in bin number 2. And then this, folks, is a whole nother presentation. But when it comes to pathogen management, the temperatures in traditional urban composting matters. So the main 2 temperature ranges are mesophilic and thermophilic. Now, in the mesophilic range, you will find a lot of organisms like your worms. They'll be hanging out, chilling, and you're moving through, decomposing things. But to kill pathogens, you want to get your compost pile to reach the temperature between 131 degrees to 165 degrees, because that is where pathogens are killed. So it's going to maintain that temperature over 3 days. If you can get it there for 3 days, for a fact you have killed pathogens. So you just want to keep taking out that pile, build it back, and then the heat cooks in the center, and then you repeat. So again, this is a whole nother presentation, but when it comes to killing pathogens, remember these two temperature ranges. Now, finally, bin number 3. What happens in bin number 3? You're basically allowing your compost to cure. So you're going to move bin number 2 to bin number 3, and this is the last step. And what you're going to get, again, is this finished, beautiful compost. It smells nice. It's airy to touch. It's moisture in it. It's just wonderful. And this is a photo of a woman. It was a senior event that I did in Saratoga, Northeast, on composting. And she smelled this finished compost. And she said, "Oh my gosh, this reminds me of when I was a little girl in South Carolina." And she had a real nostalgic moment. But that's what happens in bin number 3.
Some of the questions that we have from the audience is talking about chopping. When you were talking about chopping and keeping things really small, what are some recommendations to reduce the raw inputs, and how much are they actually chopped? And I'm thinking we're talking about the nitrogen, the green, yes, right? Like, how do we chop that?
Yeah, so the typical I guess inches is 1 to 2 inch pieces. You can use a chopper to chop those down. And that's basically, once you get it that small, then you can mix it with browns. It decomposes quickly.
In this idea of eggshells in that part of the nitrogen, do we need to rinse them? What's that about, rinsing the eggshells?
Yes. So you want to rinse the eggshells off, all of the gulk.
Yes.
From, I don't want to call it, for lack of better terms, but then you want to crush them. Okay. And basically some people dry them out.
Okay, gotcha. And then one of our audience members has been destroying the slugs, larvae or slugs. Is that the same thing? Should the slugs be destroyed when it comes to, I want to say maybe it's vermicomposting?
Oh, so in a traditional compost pile or in your soil, some people will, remove the slugs by attracting them by using beer, but I don't like to promote any killing of them, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think you noted that their presence is kind of an indicator of the air quality and what's going on. So kind of using them as messengers, and then maybe how would one improve the soil then to not necessarily kill off the slugs, but so that they're no longer needed. Is there some options we have there?
Yes, you have to make sure that your soil doesn't have anaerobic pockets. So anywhere that there's no airflow, you're going to have alcohol that's in your soil. So if you're seeing a lot of slugs, you'll know it because there's alcohol or anaerobic conditions in either your
compost. Is that when we kind of start to stir it up, or
aeration? Yep. Okay. You have to have things aerated. Yep.
Got it. You all, thank you so much. We are at 12:01. Oh my gosh. We just have to bring you back. I mean, I think that's where we are with it. You all, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Please be sure to follow Najwa and SiStain 8. Shout out to Ward 8, Washington, D.C. We're doing the things. And we are truly, truly, truly happy that you joined us this afternoon. Happy Earth Week, y'all.
Thank you. Have a good one. Keep sustaining. Thank you.
Thank you so much.